Oh, welcome back to another episode of John the PM, where we believe that managing projects is not just a job, but a way of life. Today, I like to talk about stress. Now, stress in and of itself is neither good or bad. It is what it is on that side. The analogy I like to take is, or to use in this particular case, is tension. And let's assume that you have a rope and you are pulling on it. You want just enough tension to where it's off the ground. That is awesome. In other words, you want just enough stress so that is off the ground. Stress being tension. If there's too much tension or stress, you will break. If there's too little stress or tension, then the rope will fall to the ground. So the key is to have just the right amount. So I'm not necessarily an advocate of like getting rid of all stress, mainly because that's not going to happen anyway. And you do actually need some to kind of keep you going, keep you motivated, keep that fire, that internal engine moving forward. But the corollary is also true. If you have too much stress, in other words, too much fire, you will burn out on that side. Your organization will too. So the key is just to have just enough. Now, what's the best way to know just enough? Well, yeah, in this, by the way, this doesn't matter what's personal, organizational. But that's really honestly something that you as the person, you as the organization will have to learn over a period of time by self evaluating yourself. In other words, how well do you handle stress? What kind of stress gives you that feeling, that euphoria side? What kind of stress drags you down? Well, after a period of time doing your lessons learned, after every, incident and things of that nature, you kind of gradually know what is a good stress for you and what is a bad stress. Again, when I say you, I honestly do mean you as the individual, but also as the organization. Now, let's assume that you as the individual, that you are feeling stressed and you have locked up. In other words, you're stuck. You cannot move. That is a problem. So what you have to do is, first off, take a break. Create a pause. If you're inside of a meeting, ask to take a water break. Use the bathroom. Whatever. Take a walk around the proverbial building. In other words, try to create that space in there so that you can actually think things through. What you're trying to do is to slow things down. Sometimes things go like really fast. What is one way of helping to slow things down is to breathe. One very popular technique that I personally like is the box. Either 2 seconds in, to hold for 2 seconds, release for 2 seconds, or you can use 4 seconds, on that side. In other words, the idea is just to kind of give yourself that calming sensation so that you can slow the incidents down. After that, then you can either write it out or talk it out. On a personal basis, I prefer to write it out. Why do I say write it out? Because when you're writing, you can kind of write down your concerns, what the issues are of the day. And then, when it doesn't make sense, on the things, you can start connecting the dots and kind of realigning about what's happening or what's not happening. Is this a figment of the imagination, or is this something that I need to be concerned about? You can also talk it out. Now, if you're going to talk it out, with a friend, a trusted agent, then, be sure that the person isn't going to judge you and all those good things. And maybe you just need an ear to hear yourself, as you're kind of trying to understand what the scenarios are and the different situations that you can take. Either way is perfectly fine. The key is to kind of like do that data dump, on paper, preferably, in my case, but at least talking it through. And then when you talk it through or write it out, when it finally makes sense and everything kind of connects, then you can move on to the next step. What is that next step? Identify the first three, not the first three, the biggest three priorities. What are the three priorities? The highest ones. Now you might have 50 priorities. That might be a case. But again, you're trying to get to where you can move forward. So just pick the top three. And then from those top three, kind of break it down into smaller actions. And what is going to be your final step? Take action on the smallest piece. Why? Because you just want to get moving again. Remember, you were stuck. And what we're trying to do is to get you unstuck. Again, just to kind of wrap this up, first thing, take a walk around the proverbial building. What do I mean by that? Create that space on that side. Again, if you're inside of a meeting, bio break, water break, whatever may be the case. Then two, breathe. Again, I prefer the box method, but there's a lot of different techniques out there, whatever works for you. The idea is to make sure that you can kind of slow things down. Then the third is to do that data dump. Again, whether it's going to be written format or whether it's going to be verbal, either is good. The key is that it should make some logical sense as you are kind of regurgitating the issues of the day. Then out of all that, pick your top 3 priorities and then try to identify one small step that you can take immediately. Once you get that one small step going, go to the next one, then go to the next one, then go to the next one. And then finally, you're back on track and you are moving forward. Again, the key is to move forward. And that is what the goal of the day is. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that session. If you did, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe. Actually, you could do both. That would be awesome. It helps us to be of service to you. Again, just remember that we believe that managing projects is not just a job, but a way of life.